this title together. There'll be some people who just go, pitching, it's not my sort of thing, I just don't do all of that. And those who I had the time to answer to, I said, yeah, but we're always pitching, aren't we? And I believe that what Dean's going to share tonight is going to be really important for us to understand, because it'll be actually selling stuff like, and now give me some money, or whether it's just trying to persuade somebody that, yeah, I want in on this. And it's those influencing capabilities are what set apart those people in business who are okay from the people who are extraordinary. And I don't know what stories Dean's going to tell tonight. What I can tell you is he cannot cover the stories that he could be able to tell from the people that this guy hobnobs with at all sorts of levels. I can't think of a sphere of influence where he actually is involved. It's a long list. I'll save the details on what to do. Was to elevate the key issue for us whenever we're trying to communicate, and that is, how do you show up? And some of you will be familiar with a book that I've written called Team Me and the whole archetypal model. I want to quickly introduce you to a way of thinking that can instantly cause you to change your approach in any situation. And whilst I know some of you are familiar with that material, in a way, I don't think we can hear this enough, because there's always ways in which you can say, oh, but now I've got a new situation, and how could I be approaching that differently, with a different energy, with a different focus, with a different set of questions that are going on in your mind. And so what I'm seeking to do here is literally to invite you to discover an ancient wisdom before Dean speaks, to set the scene, to say, how are you going to show up, to tap into what really is an ancient wisdom. Nothing spooky, nothing spiritual, but it's old. It's as old as, I was going to say the hills, as old as humans have been on the earth. Some of the hills are newer than that. The Himalayas are still growing by about 12 inches a year, do you know that? But there's some rocks that are older, a lot older. So this understanding can really, really transform the way you present, because it changes the way in which you show up. And what I want to do just in this quick intro, in about 15 minutes, I'm going to try and cram it. I'll see how we do. I want to show you and give you an awareness of these archetypal characters, and then to help you to see how changing your character can help you to deliver your pitch in a different way, in a more effective way. And also to introduce you to the idea that actually being flexible is probably your greatest power. And you'll see what I mean as we go into this detail. So this word archetypes, I've used it several times already. How many of you have heard the term before, archetypes? Most, but not everybody, okay, and that's fine. It's basically just made of two parts. The arc bit and the type bit, with an E in the middle joining them. So the arc bit, you know what an arch is. When here we are at Marble Arch down the road. It's this thing that goes over and above, and you go under and through. So an arch is something that's over and above, but it's also got this sense of being ancient or old or original. So an archaeologist digs up old stuff, yeah? If it was back from the 50s, you wouldn't call it an archaeologist, you just might call him a historian or culture vulture or something, but he's not an archaeologist. It's got to be old. It's got to be really old in order to warrant the term arc, yeah? So arc like archaic or archive. The old books get put in the archive. So that's the old stuff, but it's also got this sense of being over, that it's actually over us. Your arch enemy is the ultimate master enemy. I did not ask for that, did I? Time for cleansing. It's good, I know. You need to do it sometimes. You just need to do your ablutions. Right, moving quickly on to types. A type, when you use a typewriter and you hit the key, you get the same letter in the same shape every single time in the same place. It's true. It's like having R2-D2 next to you. It doesn't matter into that. Somebody find the plug. Thank you. And so a type is the same thing. It's the same form that comes again and again and again. Whatever you do with it, it still comes out the same way. It's a type. It's a model. It's a pattern. It's fixed. Whereas in the old days, when you used to write, You wouldn't, even your own handwriting would look slightly different day to day. And if 2 or 3 people started putting the letter R down, you'd recognize it, but it would be different. Whereas a typewriter would give you a fixed form. So what's an archetype? Well, let's put that together. An archetype is an ancient form or a pattern that is over and above all. Carl Jung, that famous psychoanalyst, started to recognize that archetypes existed in everybody's thinking. They were kind of there from birth. People knew what these things were. It wasn't even necessarily something that was instilled by the culture. They just knew it. They got it. And he had his ideas about the collective unconscious and dumped this stuff somewhere deep inside of us. But we just recognize it. There are patterns in us that we didn't really ever have to learn. And so, because they are ancient, because they are patterns that are over and above all, and in a sense in all, they're recognized by all. This stuff works for every race, every culture, every creed, every language, across every geographical location on the planet, and probably off planet too, but that's another story. And these are 6 key archetypes that I work with. There are many archetypes. There's somebody who's written a book about 125 different archetypes. I can't remember 125 different archetypes, let alone tell you the differences between them. But I've come back to a model of 6 that's a variation of whatever else you'll see out there in the world. And we have these 6 characters. These 6 characters really do define facets of our personality, facets of our character. In a sense, although you might say, oh, I'm more that than that, we've got all of them inside of us. Every one of those characters is a part of us. And let's go through them in detail, and you'll begin to recognize bits of you in these descriptions, and you'll probably recognize some other people that you know. Some may be very close to you, and say, oh, that's rather like them. Okay, so let's quickly go through the sovereign, the king or the queen, the boss, the ruler. They're commanding, they're responsible, they're just and fair. They're the ones who set the law, and they love order and peace and prosperity. That's their business. They've got their territory, their realm. They're very aware of their area of responsibility. Then if we look at the warrior archetype, I almost don't need to describe this. And I mean, this is the point with archetypes. They are obvious characters. They're very flat in the sense that there's no real surprises. You know them, you know what they're going to do. They are mission focused. You give them something to do, they will take it, they will own it, and they will make sure it happens. And they enforce boundaries. The sovereign's the one who sets the law, but you don't see the queen running down the street saying, car stop. You know, she's got the police force to do that, okay? They're direct, they're determined, they're decisive, they're disciplined. Lots of D's, that's what they're all about. And they're loyal and they're dependable. At least if they trust you and you have their respect, they are, okay, when they're on side. And they will always finish the job. If you're a project manager, you've got to have a lot of warrior in you because you're just pressing through until the job is done, if you're a good one. So they're the action taker. Then we've got the sage. Now the sage is like the Sherlock Holmes or the Mr. Spock if you're a Trekkie. No emotion anywhere, it's just the facts. Just give me the evidence. That's logical, Captain. That's illogical, Captain, etc., etc. So they're educated, they're wise, they love learning, they're always looking for those distinctions. They're discerning, they're perceptive, but they're rational, not emotional. They're looking at what they can measure, what they can track, what evidence they can find. So this is the wise old owl. And then you've got 3 other guys, the mystic, the lover, and the jester. The mystic is the dreamy one, but they're also good innovators. So they're not just floating off the earth, although the warrior thinks they are. Warrior thinks they're just too dreamy, too nebulous. But they have a great way of transcending the current situation. Some could call that faith. It's definitely a sense of hope. And let's not just think of wishy-washy hope, or I hope something's going to happen. Real hope creates a vision inside of you of a better future. If you want to know how powerful hope is, think about fear. Fear is its nasty twin. Both of them create a picture inside of you of an expected future. You don't fear something that's happening now. You're experiencing it. It's always set in the future. But hope is an incredibly powerful force, and the mystic plays to it. Unfortunately, if you get those mystics who are a bit negative, they will use the fear factor as well, and they will manipulate through that, as you may see when they get a bit overheated. We'll talk about those later. They transcend and they transform. They believe that a situation can change, and they do it by going up high. They get a vision of something above and beyond. And they're quite happy with mystery. The sage hates mystery. They see it as their job to break up mystery until it's worked out what's actually going on. The mystic is quite happy with things being a bit nebulous and feeling their way through. They're very strong with their instinct and their intuition. I wonder how many mystics we have in the room. Okay, I didn't answer that yet. Oh, you, thank you. You're a machine. The lover archetype. Now, the lover's not just the Romeos and Juliets of the world. The lover is the person who cares about people. I did a quick profile of somebody at a consultancy the other day, but I almost didn't need to, because as soon as this girl walked into the room, just her way of communicating and looking out for people, thought, okay, the lover's quite strong with that one. Let's just see where the other ones are in her as well. So we have a way of profiling people, but they're empathetic. They seek harmony. They're playful, they're spontaneous, and they're generally expressive. You can get shy lovers who are a bit less expressive, but they want to express. You know, if they feel the freedom to do so, they will be expressive. And then finally, we've got the jester. Now, jesters are absolutely vital. They make light of things. So all the other guys, we've got some quite serious characters going on with all of them, but the jester is the one who makes light of stuff. They distract quite often from what's going on, and that can be useful and it can be horrendously annoying. They often then will come in, they'll entertain. You give the jester the job of entertaining. You don't give that to the sage. The sage says, I calculated that joke and I thought it was going to go down very well, and clearly it didn't. It's because they just don't get that dynamic, whereas the jester just brings that light and that laughter anyway. So they bring joy, humor, laughter, color into a situation. A day without a jester is like a whole week without a Saturday. You need to let your hair down at some point. Okay. So what's the point of all of this? Well, once you understand the archetypes, once you build that awareness, the archetypes are there whether you recognize them or not, but once you build your awareness of these characters, you can then actually activate, do certain things to bring up the character that you need more of. I'm sure there's been times when you've been faced with a job and you know you just need to bring it, and something inside you steps up and says, I'm going to make this happen. And when you do that, up comes the warrior. Now, from now on, since you've got this language, you can actually say, warrior, let's do it. And something begins to focus. You have a slightly different mental focus. You focus your energies into getting the job done. You push other things aside. Warriors will say, just get out of my way. When they're set on their mission, they won't be focusing on what other people are thinking and feeling. Okay? In their purest form. They will just be focused on getting it done. And so your achievement might be the warrior's achievement, but it might be the lover's achievement. You might need to actually build a connection with somebody. The warrior's not going to help you in that situation. You're going to need to take time. You're going to need to focus on the things that the lover would focus upon. And so these things are key. You could do that for any one of the archetypes. They all have a particular mental focus. They all have a particular set of language patterns that they use that you can learn, you can adopt yourself. And they also have a certain posture. So if someone comes into the room and they stand there and you look at this, you know you're not dealing with the lover. They are there miffed. So what does this mean for us? Well, there's one thing to be aware of here. The archetypes are very, very powerful. It can put you in a position to change the character you're playing at any moment to get a different result. If you're stuck in any particular situation in life, I would propose to you that you stop dealing with it with your usual archetype and you switch into the model and mode of another one, because that is the key to your breakthrough. You've been going at it in an ineffective archetype. Change the character you're playing, and actually, if you change the character, you change the story. If you step up, Luke Skywalker was a farm boy, and then he steps up, he becomes a Jedi. Everything changes in Star Wars, okay? Spider-Man starts off as some teenager, gets bit by a spider, and all of a sudden his identity has changed, the character has changed, everything changes from that moment in the story. Every story of progression there'll be that point at which the character suddenly changes. Caterpillars to butterflies. Maybe you've had the time in your life where there's been a significant change. And you just say, yeah, I stepped up, I became more, I saw myself in a different light. Okay? But there's a danger with this. And the danger is that we can sometimes label ourselves or label other people as being one of these particular characters, and then we kind of have got them stuck in a particular place. And there's a danger there. So what we're doing here is not being that simplistic about he's a warrior, she's the lover, this one's a sovereign. But we look at a whole profile. So what I want to invite you to do is actually here and now is to grab a little mobile phone, if you've got one, and to do a profiling exercise. You don't have to, but if you do this right now, you will have insights about yourself. If you can go through, if you can get your phone out, there is a free Wi-Fi in the Thistle app, an initial set of questions, and this would be really, really useful because you can get your own profile. It does take about 10 seconds to sign in or hit a Facebook thing. And that would be mighty useful if you do that. Whilst you're doing so, I'm not going to try and interrupt you too much, but I'm going to tell you that what's coming is essentially the app will provide you with your two strongest archetypal characters. It's not the whole story, but it'll help you to understand something about the key characters that drive you. If you're having any problems, give me a shout, but it'll be a really useful exercise for you to actually just go through. So it's 30 questions. It should just take you about a minute and a half to answer those questions if you've got that. But there is a sign up at the front end of that. Are there any, you guys okay? Shout if there's any problems. Are you're okay? Feel free to shout, interrupt, ask a question. It should be simple enough, but there's often issues of one sort or another. Here come the cakes, just in time. Not distracting you, don't be distracted. Keep your focus. You're warriors now. I might have. Has anybody completed? You got? Okay, keep going.
Do I need to register first?
Yeah, so you will need to put in an email address and a first name, I think, maybe a second name as well, or you can just hit the Facebook button. If you are registered in there, then it should be fine. Has anybody completed? Still there? Some of the questions are easier than others, aren't they? Ooh, I don't know about that one. So carry on with that, just push it through. You can ignore what I'm saying, but for those of you who've got there already, I'm just going to bring up the next. There are actually 6 then of these characters that I've given you a quick introduction to. And essentially what the tool will do is show you which are the 2 strongest. You've got yours already. There you go.
I could try again.
No, you don't. Well, yeah, you can redo it, so you know that. So you will eventually come through to a screen that will just give you your two, you'll get a little symbol, insignia, with a hat on it, and a colour. You'll have a lead character, and you'll have a supporting character, which is the strongest and which is kind of your support. They may be very close to each other in terms of what makes you who you are, and also the truth is there are some other characters that could be just below it as well. This then will lead you through, you can hit on learn more, and there are several pages of detail behind each of them. I'll just invite you to look at that in your own time. And then there's a kind of keep playing button that can take you off to all sorts of things that I can support with afterwards. But this is just a way of you finding out your power profile, your strongest two. So I know there's a few people looking at. I do want you to get through to that power profile, because before I hand over to Dean, which is coming up in just a moment, I want to ask you this one question. Well, there's two questions. One around your lead character, and one around your supporting character. So, if you've got your lead character, if you haven't quickly get it, the question is, how has that character helped you in the past? Being that person, being that character, how has that helped you in any situation, whether in life generally, but this is the way I do life, maybe for some of you. I don't know, for some of you it might be a bit of a surprise. For some of you might say, this machine is broken. I don't like it at all. It's insulting. We shall see. Anybody still? Who's got the power profile? Have you got three there? Couple, 3, 4, good.
It took a while to log in, but I came
Oh, okay, right. Okay. What I want you to do, carry on going through to it, please, once you've got it. And once you've got it, this is the question. I want you to tell the person next to you, find somebody you can talk to, and if you need to go into threes, that's fine as well, but tell them the answer to that question. How has your strongest character helped you in life? And just do share that amongst you, and then I'm going to be introducing you to Dean. Go for it.
Which is good. I think it's good. So a lot of my clients now do stuff in return bags.
I've got number 2. That's because I carry paper. I've got a team, and I think the company I work for are the biggest contributors out, and so looking after them, building them up, encouragement and stuff like that. It's my job.
So then you will respect them and look after them. Okay. So yours is not as much as but you're building people. I think I had to manage things before it's so challenging. I don't want to jump back into it anytime soon. Different
I think I did do it again, and I got the same result, which is what you would expect. But I remember when I first bought this time, the opportunity to hear it. Negative questions, which were hard to answer. You had to think about. I really dislike. Most of all in the test, I found quite hard to. I did an app for dementia sufferers with music, and it took me, I created it, and it took me like 3 months to try and improve it. It was really tough. I think when you build something, it's completely different to how other people see it. Yeah, we're doing live music and stuff. It's like in care homes and shelter accommodation stuff. Yeah, fantastic, because I saw you were watching the dementia choir.
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it? How much difference music can make to
Okay, guys, thank you. I hope you got there in the end. A few quizzical faces, a few strange smiles. How many of you found that it was somewhat accurate? Yeah? Okay, everybody found it at least somewhat. How many of you thought it was very accurate? Yeah? Most? Okay. And it's hard for a machine to play back exactly who you are, especially because if you're, say, strong with Lover and Sage, some of their characteristics contradict each other, but that's what makes you the interesting person that you are. And you may find that those two were your lead and your support, or you may find that actually the Sage is just a little bit below, and this particular profile has to just take the strongest two, and doesn't give you the fullest picture. But there's a little sneaky thing that I can go away around the back, and I can actually then look at your full profile and see what that looks like, and that's what I'll use in any kind of. It was about 20 years ago when we first met. We worked together in a startup, an online startup, and I got to know Dean for his remarkable abilities in the areas of design and other such things. But we reconnected just a couple of years ago, and we started then saying, well, hold on, what have you been doing for 20 years? And we started looking at what we were doing, and what I found is that this man and I have almost exactly the same sort of set of values. And that's what I think has brought us back together, and we're going to be doing some workshops across the rest of the year around pitching and presentation. But he's also come out with all sorts of stories and photographs, and oh yes, here I am. It's like, what's that? It looks like it looks like the Oscars, but it's some charity gallery thing. Where was that? That was in the States. That looks like Bill Clinton on the table next to you. Yeah, that was Bill Clinton. And other such stories that we hear from this man. He's operating in, and he'll give you a quick snapshot. He's also involved in political circles. He's a remarkable artist who has had work signed by many prime ministers. Has a habit of sketching up prime ministers and other such characters. But he's also extraordinarily, I find him just down to earth and real. So he's able to see, he seems to transition and transcend through all echelons of society. He's able to talk from the heads of nations down to the tramps on the street corner, and he's got this big heart, and that's what I appreciate most about him. I'm really pleased that he came along tonight for this, and we've got a lot of other stuff to come. So let's just give him a warm round of applause and hand over.
Thank you. A very delightful introduction. Thank you so much, and thank you all for coming here on an evening in the middle of London when you could be out, in Soho drinking. And just to start with, I just thought I'd mention, just from a housekeeping perspective, if you want to share anything, because one of the things that I often find when doing these talks is that everybody gets something slightly different out of it. And actually, if you share that online, then you might find that someone else has picked something up that you haven't, or also they might be grateful for you sharing that. So if you use Win That Pitch as a hashtag, but also Power Pitch for tonight, and feel free to contact me. I'll put these up at the end as well. But what I want to do, obviously, is take a photo, so I'll hold off moving forward. No, brilliant, thank you. So, as Pad said, there you go. As Pad said, I've got quite an eclectic life, and I've been very fortunate. In part because of the people I've got to know. Actually, I think the people we surround ourselves with really are a reflection of ourselves, and often the journey that we go on is as much as important who the passengers are with us as it can be the actual destination we're trying to reach. And I thought I'd give you a quick overview of my background, and the only reason why is to give you a sense of actually where the Win That Pitch brand came from and my book, How to Win. Because actually I think pitching is not just about going and doing a Dragon's Den style elevator pitch, or an investment pitch. We pitch all the time. We pitch every day. We pitch ideas to our family about where we want to go on holiday. We pitch when we go for a job interview to be able to get the next move in our career. We pitch all the time. And so what I want to go through tonight is share some of those insights around what pitching really is, some techniques for that, but also build on some of my experiences. And I just thought I'd just share a quick glance at some of those here. So a charity auction to celebrate 100 years of women in politics. So it's actually painted her and a portrait of Emmeline Pankhurst, which was really exciting. But one of the things for me, the reason why I show it is because I think actually at the heart of a pitch, and actually in the heart of a good life, is creativity. It's not just about creativity as in can you paint, but can you look at the world differently? And I think if you look at what Pad talked about earlier, we all have our unique perspective. In fact, on his slide he had a picture of Einstein. Einstein never really considered himself to be a great thinker as such. He just looked at the world differently and was able to do that in such a way that he uncovered an previously unfathomable insights into the way that the world works. And that's because he looked at it in a different way. At school he failed most of his exams, you know. So think about that. Actually, what do you look at the world at differently from everyone else? Because that isn't something you should feel bad about because you're not like everyone else. You should feel brilliant about because it's something that's unique to you. Secondly, I wanted to mention this here. So my business is a social media partner for a thing called the Holmes Report. And the Holmes Report does events all around the world. And I've been very fortunate to go to Miami a few times, Washington last year, for their big events. And we often get to hear from really amazing big brands, big organisations, big agencies about how they pitch, but also what campaigns they're doing. And increasingly, the interesting thing that I've found in the world of commerce, in the world of PR, in the world of marketing, especially when you're thinking about your organisations or your ambitions, is this concept of purpose. What's our purpose in life? And if you look at most of the big campaigns now, they're about purpose. They're about organisations finally coming to the truth that they can't just keep taking from the world, they have to give back. And that's more than just signing a cheque at the end of the year. That's actually much more about understanding what is it, what's their place in the world, and how can they use their skills to do something that adds value to the world around them. You know, whether that's education or products or whatever it might be, but actually how can we make a difference? And increasingly online you see people wanting to change the world, but very rarely do they want to change themselves. You know, they want everyone else to change. They'll rail at Brexit or whatever it might be, but actually how many of them go, well, actually, I need to make a change in this. And often pitching is about that, it's understanding your purpose, and I'll come to that in a moment. That's my book, How to Win. I'll talk about some insights from that as we go through. I'm also, for my sins, I'm a parliamentary candidate. I have been twice, so I've ran for Parliament to try and be an MP. On for the Conservative Party, you feel free to throw things, but wait till the end because we're in the evening. But that's me talking at the Conservative Party conference, and what I was talking about actually wasn't policies. It was about loneliness. And if you search for me in loneliness and Conservative Party, you'll hopefully find a video. I'm sure Pad will share that afterwards. But the reason why loneliness was so important to me, that at a conference where I really should have been talking about policies and law and, you know, campaigning, it really resonated with me when I last ran for Parliament, because I was knocking on so many doors, and every fifth or sixth door I'd knock on it, and behind it would be somebody who had no one living with them. They hadn't spoken to somebody for a long time, and they were lonely. And we talked this week about the mental health awareness and all of these things. But actually loneliness, for me, I think is a scourge on the world, and in particular in this country. And I say that in particular around pitching, because for me, you know, communications is the most important skill we have to be able to communicate who we are, communicate with our community, and communicate more widely. And the reason why I've got this side and these pictures over here is because whilst in the UK I was knocking on doors and finding people were lonely when they were cramped in these terrace houses, wall to wall, literally meters away from people next to them. And yet I was lucky enough to go to the Philippines, and this guy here is incredible. It's one of my friends, Greg Secker, who runs Learn to Trade, if you've heard of them. And what most people don't know about Greg is that Greg actually, I've done a lot of work with him, and he is the most incredible philanthropist. And he literally, for a long story, I won't go into the details fully now, but he's literally built a village in the middle of the jungle in the Philippines to help people. He's home to 100 families. There's about 600-700 people in the Philippines who previously had nothing, that have now got a roof over their head and are beginning to, as Greg puts it, you know, go from just survive to thrive. And what I learnt from Greg and some of the works that we did together is that actually you can find the most amazing humanity sometimes in the worst situations. And this was me helping carry the roof of a blind guy who had lost everything, and we were carrying his home onto the outskirts of the village that Greg had built, so that he could be homed in a safe area whilst the rest of the buildings were being made. And so it was that area that he could walk around without the risk of damage from people who were building the buildings. But the reason why I mention this is that one of the events of this that was so powerful for me was that this was shortly after I'd been running for election. And I was in a place where people felt lonely when they were meters away from each other. And yet here I was singing Hi Ho, it's off to where we go, with a bunch of people who've lost everything, in Typhoon Haiyan 5 years ago. And it just shows the power that actually mindset, the power of community is so strong, and actually being able to bring that world together, as through someone like Greg, or even through yourselves, you can really make a difference. And it doesn't need to be something massive. You don't need to build a village, but sometimes you need to build a village around you of people that can really make a difference. And pitching is a bit like that, to bring it back to that conversation, and I'll explain why in a moment. And then these last two pictures here, and this one I'll focus on in a moment, but this one here is of me, which was one of the most wonderful moments. I'm actually a children's book author. Sorry to list all these random things, but I published 4 children's books, and this was me in the Philippines, in the village, reading my children's books to the kids out there. And the thing that's so amazing, and Pat talked about this earlier in terms of the archetypes, but it's about storytelling. And the story to a child in the Philippines, to a child in the UK where I've read them at schools, or somebody reading something online, it's the same smile. There's a universal language for children around storytelling, around seeing themselves, and it's open. Yet as we get older, we often close ourselves down from that, and we don't always believe in what we're talking about. We don't always believe in ourselves. And so there's an ability there. And that's why pitching isn't just about selling something. It's about actually believing something to sell. And you have to believe in yourself to do that. So whatever businesses or startups or roles you're in, you need to be able to believe in it truly, because otherwise it will just eat away at you. And that's why some people live in areas that they can't stand because they don't want to be there. And these people were forced to be in a situation they didn't want to be in and make the best of it, thanks to a catalyst like Greg. But the story I wanted to quickly tell you before I move forward is for that image in the corner there. I was very fortunate through the work that I did with Greg that he introduced me to the Starkey Hearing Foundation. I'm going to try not to trip as I walk over here. So the Starkey Hearing Foundation is, most people haven't heard of them, but they're the most incredible philanthropic organisation. They were asked by Bill Clinton 10 years ago, in fact 2010, if they would give away 1 million hearing aids by the end of the decade. 1 million hearing aids. Now they're a hearing company, they weren't just randomly asked. Someone walked up to someone on the street, will you give me 1 million hearing aids? So he went into the company, and they were already doing loads of work anyway. But he said, I'm going to set you a real challenge, 1 million hearing aids to the places in the world where children would never get to hear, where people would never have that opportunity. And they took up that challenge, and the guy who took it up is a guy called Bill Austin, who Greg introduced me to, and when I was in the Philippines, we went on this mission for a day, where I spent the day fitting hearing aids to children who otherwise would never have got to hear, which was just incredible. The reason why I put this image up is that I got to a point after doing 10 or 15 hearing aid fittings, and having that moment where children can hear their parents' voice for the first time, and their eyes light up, and then be able to speak for the first time, and be able to hear themselves and form words, or sounds at least, for the first time. I mean, it's magical. But the space we were in was probably 10, 20 times the size of this. It was outside but covered. Humidity was crazy. The heat was intense. And there was a massive crowd of people at the back, all sat there, all with their parents with kids usually. There were some older people as well, but parents with kids primarily, all waiting to get their fitting. Now they've gone through the prescription process. They don't just bring a bucket of hearing aids and say put them in. It's a whole process and follow up and so on. Now on this day I'd done about 10-15 children, and the process that you go through is really quite bizarre if you've not done it before. How many of you have ever been involved with fitting hearing aids? So I don't want to make a fool of myself by saying I did it wrong. So the way that you do it is incredible. So you get, usually with the child, they sit on a chair. So if you imagine there's a little child there, and there's a little tube that you put into a hearing aid. So you sort of bend down and you put the tube in. And this lady here, by the way, is Miss Earth 2015. So she was helping me. She's one of the ambassadors to the charity. So she's magnificent. Angela Ong, who's fantastic through the whole process. So we were fitting these hearing aids. So I put the tube in, and then you check the volume, and you say a thing called ba ba. You know, ba ba. Simple as that. And the eyes don't light up. Okay, turn up the volume. Ba ba. Ba ba. And you see that, okay, they've heard something. Then you adjust it, and you use the universal language of that or that. Was it too loud? Was it too quiet? Now they don't know what's too loud. They don't know what's too quiet. So you have to, you're using a different language, try and get them to think about which way will it work. You know, is it working? And then they start to get it. Ba ba, ba ba. And then you get one ear, and then you move over. So imagine I won't walk over her. So she sat there, and you go ba ba, ba ba, same process. And then eventually, in both ears, they're at the right level. And you see them sort of get it. And then their parent will say something to them. And in some places, people like Elton John and Lady Gaga go along and they sing to them. So the first thing they hear is some magnificent music. But in this instance, sadly with me. So and so ba 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 ba. So you do this, and then their parents say something, their eyes light up. So I've done that 10 times. And then after that, what you usually do is you try and get them to speak. Now the thing is, if you've never heard yourself, you don't know how to speak, because you don't know how to form the words. So the challenge is that you then get them to try and say a vowel. So ah. But the way it comes out often is they can't say it, and that's not me trying to sort of, I'm not doing a very good example of it, but you get the sense of it. But what happens is this magical moment, which for me was even more powerful than their eyes lighting up, because you have this magical moment where after they try, if they can't quite get it, you get their hand and you put it on your throat like this. Just try it yourself. Just put your hand in it and speak. Just say ah. We were sat there, and that's her mother in the corner, and we were sat there, and then I was trying to get her to speak. So did the hand thing, ah. It's like ba ba. Couldn't get it. She could not get it. So I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, to the point that I realised, oh my gosh, I'm really probably making her feel uncomfortable. There's a strange guy from another country, you know, getting her to try and say strange things, and she couldn't get it, and you could see the intensity on her face, really trying. You know, she so wanted to be able to say it. She'd sat at the back of the room, watching all of these other children come up to the front, get fitted, say a word, have everyone clap them, and go off. And she couldn't do it. And the failing, I felt, was in me, not her. Perhaps I was doing something wrong. And Bill Austin, who's this amazing billionaire, I was thinking he looks a bit like Doctor Who if he'd been American in the 70s. He's like this amazing godlike creature. And he came over to me and he said, give her a few moments. He said, fill out this prescription, which I had no idea what I was doing. So I got a pen and pretended to write. And Rosemary sat in the chair. And so I was stood over here, if you imagine, sort of watching her just to make sure she was okay. And after a few moments, she got up and she walked over to her mom. And my heart sank. It was as if someone had just took my heart, thrown it into the ocean like a stone, and it was sinking and sinking and sinking and sinking. Because I thought, you know what, I failed her. And I feel it even now, you know, I even get the tingles. And so she stood up. She walked over to her mum. And I thought, oh my gosh, Dean, you've done that so wrong. What if you know, she didn't get her moment. And I felt awful. And you can tell I've been crying from that picture, red-faced British guy, you know, with tears rolling down. She looked perfect with her makeup, and there's me, you know, red and bloated all right. So anyway, she goes over to her mum. I was like, what do? Do I try and get her to try again? What have I done wrong? I hope I haven't upset her. You know, this is her moment and she's not had it. She goes over to her mum, and her mother does what all mothers do, and any parent does, to be fair. She looked down at her daughter and reassuringly put her hand on her shoulder. And she just looked at her as if to say, it's okay. It's okay. Because for me, even now, I won't put it. It's okay. And I just sat watching this in slow motion. And then she looked up at her mum. And she'd really been trying, you know, mama, She couldn't get it. And then she looked up at her mum. Just imagine this. And crystal clear, she said, mama. And even now, it chokes me up. She said mummy for the first time. And that was what she'd been trying to say. I hadn't realised it in my mind that it wasn't, she didn't want to say she didn't want to say baba, she wanted to say mummy in Filipino. And I burst into tears and broke me for a few hours actually, even though I carried on. And it still does to this day, because the reason why I tell that story when we're talking about pitching is that when you think about it, pitching is about communication. But what we often try and do is communicate too much. In that instance, the power of that one word, 4 letters, M-A-M-A, Mama, changed her life forever. It's a memory I will have till the day I die. And it changed her mother's life forever. 4 letters. Now, when you think about pitching, when you think about the work that you do, when you think about why you do it, don't think about all the billions of things. Just think about the purity of what is it that you really want to do, what is it you really want to sell, but also what difference are you making to them by them buying your product or your service or you if it's for a job interview. What is it that you're making a difference about? Because that's what the pitch is. The pitch isn't Dragon's Den, give us a pile of money from your desk. It's that moment of just absolute, utter joy that you've been able to change someone's life in whatever way that is. And so I'll come back to this story a few times as we go through, but the reason why I start with that is because I learned through those experiences what communications really is. I've worked in the communications industry with major brands for many years, but in that moment of purity I realised it's about the two-way dialogue. It's about listening, and it's also about speaking. And it's about hearing people properly about what is it they really want to do, what is it they really want to say. And so, on a more business-like sense, sorry, I should have given that Kleenex before. Sorry for making some of you cry. But am I already at 10 minutes? Oh my gosh. Sorry, I spent far too long on that. But we'll cover the rest of it as we go through. But the reason I say that is for the reasons I've just mentioned, but also, it's also to think about what is a pitch. Now, a pitch for me, I've learned over the years, is these 3 components. It's your brand value. So what is it about you that's unique? It's about storytelling. How do you tell that story with authenticity, with engagement, with trust? And it's about sales. Or you could change that for call to action. You know, what are you going to get somebody to do? And that's about converting into customers, or getting somebody to change their mind or their behaviour about what you're doing. And the reason why that's so important is that you have to start to think then, what is it that you're actually trying to achieve here? So if you think about this for yourselves, and how many of you have got businesses? Okay, and how many of you want to start a business? Okay, yes. How many of you want to be millionaires? Not everyone put their hands up, that's brilliant. I've met many, and actually they're not always as happy if they look on Instagram, so actually you have to find yourself before you find your riches. But, you know, brand values, so when you think about what you do or what you want to do, you know, what are your brand values? What's unique about you? What is it unique about your product or your idea or your thinking or your approach that is absolutely you and not somebody else? Because that's what will help you get up in the morning to keep trying to sell it, keep trying to do what you do. What's the story you tell about that? Why did you get to that point? Why did you leave a big job or a successful job or a successful career or a job you hate to go and set up a business? Or why do you want to do that? What do you want to do with that? And the sales bit, really, and this is one of the things that Greg taught me actually, was that sales, what most people get wrong with sales, because they think sales is trying to push something onto somebody. When most people think of sales, they think of second-hand car salesmen, you know, sort of dirty bidding, oh gosh. But actually, if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe in it 100%, that you're making a difference with what you're doing, then actually selling, as Greg used to say to me, is just about transferring the feeling. It's about transferring the excitement and the belief you've got to somebody else. So when you're thinking about what you're doing, what is it that you're transferring the feeling about? What difference? And in the case of Rosamay, you know, in a way, with those things, whilst I wasn't pitching to her, she fulfilled all of those, you know. And because if you think there's an authenticity there about why she was there, about who she was, the storytelling aspects of what difference it made, because it meant she would no longer be bullied, or at least reduce that, but also the conversion there to her mother was getting her on side and believing in that. So what is your pitch worth? Well, think about that, not just in terms of monetary value, but what's it worth long term? What does it mean to you as an individual? What's it to mean to you, to your business? quite often in the agency world, you will find that the businesses will take on what they call lost leaders. They'll pitch for something so that they get that brand or that client on side, so they can then have investment into the UK, or into London more specifically. And over time, as I've met lots of startup founders, is that they all start with this, the startup dream. How many of you have had sort of a startup dream, like a moment of inspiration where you've gone, gosh, I want to sell this or do this? Just put your hands up just so I get a sense. Yeah, you all have, pretty much. And you all start with a startup dream. The problem is 6 months into having a startup dream and going for it, you end up with this, the startup. You end up with admin, taxes, paperwork. So all that brilliant inspiration, I'm going to live the life I love, suddenly becomes something where you don't always have time to do what you wanted to do because you're doing all the stuff that you left the job for doing. And so that's why it's important from day one in your business, or even if you're 10 years into your business, but from day one today, you start to think about how can you reclaim some of that time? How can you reclaim and not have to do the bits that you hate doing? You know, and a really simple way of doing this is to get a single piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and write on one side a header which says, what do I love doing? And on the other side, what do I hate doing? And on the one side, write what you love doing, the other side, write what you hate doing. And then go through and say how much of your time every day is spent in the love column or the hate column. And what you find at this point, the startup dream point, loads of stuff's in the love column. 6 months in, loads of stuff's in the hate column. You know, the admin and the tax and the returns and the paperwork and the managing people and all of that stuff. So what you have to do is work out how you can reclaim that time. Because the best person to sell you and your business is you. Especially in the early days, you can build teams. But as you grow, you start to go from, you know, people who are inspired by you and what you want to achieve, to hiring employees who want a day job and are dreaming of their own startup. So you have to think about how you best manage that and build that on. I've got 5 minutes, okay. And that's why this quote by Leonardo da Vinci I think is so powerful. Because when you think about what you're doing, and I'm going to come to more of the details of the pitch process in a moment, but every now and then, go away, have a little relaxation, but when you come back to your work, your judgment will be surer. Now the trouble is, when you're in startup mode, or when you're working in a business or in a pitch, especially when it's quite time intensive, is your head's buried in it. You know, you're constant, that's your world, that's your focus. And what it means is you sometimes spend more time doing it, miss opportunities, try and go after everything. And so you have to sometimes force yourself to stand back, try and strip over, stand back and look at what's going on in the world around you. Look at what the real opportunities are, and I'll explain why I say that in a moment. And that, in fact, actually is why, for me, I started the Win That Pitch brand. And I won't labour on this now, I'll mention it later, but, you know, I wrote my book, How to Win, which actually wasn't going to be a book. I was going to write a 4-page checklist on things to think about when pitching. And then I realised it was 8 pages, and then it was 12 pages of checklist, then it was 16, and then it ended up being a book with tips and guides and all the rest of it, techniques. From speaking to different people and for myself around the pitch process. It's now a 120-page book, and it's available on my site, but also will be on Amazon in the next couple of weeks. But then I thought, well, actually, people need some more guidance on that, so I wrote a course around that. And actually, just today, I've done a major announcement. I've got 14 associates who are, you know, one of the guys is a leadership professor who advises the space program in China. I've got another lady who is amazing, a woman who used to be the editor-in-chief of PR Week. I mean, I won't go into it now, but what I've been fortunate to do is once I realised that Win That Pitch actually was the bit that I really loved doing, the pitch bit, things started to come towards me rather than me trying to chase other things. And I think when you find that moment, find that thing that you love doing, you'll find stuff suddenly starts happening. You'll bump into people that you didn't realise actually had a common value or a common interest. A bit like Pad. When we caught up a couple of years ago, you know, we hadn't been in touch, but then all of a sudden we had things that were in common. And just the next quote on that, so before we take a short break, is this brilliant quote by Abraham Lincoln, which is, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." And the reason why this is such an important slide, in fact I'd say it's probably the most important quote when pitching, is that especially when you're trying to grow a business, every opportunity looks like it's going to be the game changer. We spend so much time trying to chase every lead, every pitch, every brief, every opportunity, but not everything is right for you. And there's a classic phrase in marketing, which is, you know, the number one way to fail as a business is to try and be everything to everyone, because you can't be. And actually, you'll be nothing to no one if that's the case. So you have to think about what is it. And sometimes the more niche you are, the more specific you are, actually the more successful you'll be. Because whatever you do, you'll find there'll be thousands of people around the world who probably love that too. You know, so you have to think about who your target audience is, but when you're pitching, you have to really think about how can you prepare for it. And that often comes down to the briefing process. And so within the guide, I started to identify what are the sort of questions you need to ask when you're developing a brief or identifying what the client really wants. Now, in my world, often you get big. Sorry, you won't be able to read. It's free. Feel free. You can take the book. But I'll gladly share some of it later. But the reason why I say this is that for me, often the pitches I've done in the past have been, you know, for a few £100,000 or a few £1 million, and so you get these big, lengthy documents that you have to respond to, and they've got all the information in. But actually, the principles are the same whether it's a small project or a huge project. You need to know questions like, or answers to questions like, why are they putting this out to brief? Why does the customer want what you're doing? Have they got someone that they're already buying it from and they've let them down? Or is it because it's something new to them? What are their expectations? When would they want it by? What sort of customer service are they expecting? What are their expectations? You have to really think about these sorts of details. Because actually, if you understand and get into the mindset of who you're selling to, it's much easier to then understand whether you're a good fit, whether you're likely to win. Because often, especially when you're going after big projects, you know, in the agency world and in a lot of businesses, you know, the client doesn't actually want to hire a new agency. They have to go through procurement every 5 years, and so they're forced to go out to tender, and you'll never win it. So you have to ask questions before you start wasting time. Because even Warren Buffett is one of the richest men in the world, one of the most successful investors in the world. He has a quote which is that for him, you know, the most precious thing is time. It's the only thing he can't buy. He can buy a yacht, cars, hotels, whatever he wanted. The only thing he cannot buy is time. And you have to think about that for yourselves. How are you carving up and balancing your time so you can focus on the things you really love doing, and you'll find that that's the more powerful thing. I'm just running out, so I think we're gonna, while you mull over those questions, we'll have a short break. There's nice cakes here, and then we'll go on and I'll make the session for you. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Dean. We'll have 10 minutes. Yes, cake and coffees, and yeah, then we'll come on back for another half-hour blitz at the end. Hopefully, I'm getting loads of stuff out of that. Are you too?
Yes.
Thank you, Dean. Eat cake. Drink coffee.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm trying not to do spoilers.
Thank you. You've got 36 people watching you across the whole world. So you've got.
There you go. We're going global, Dean.
You've gone global, not you're going global. You have gone global. You have gone global. And just a quick one to thank them. And he's invited me to what you're watching. And as you've heard his name, thank you so much to everybody watching from Kenya, from Coventry, from Nigeria, Mel Goldberg, lovely to see you. Peterborough, lovely to see you. And is there something that you'd like to inspire them? And thank you so much. He invited me here, so I'm honored. I just met him last 2 weeks, I think, maybe, or a week, and I'm so inspired that I thought, being me, I love abundance, I love sharing, and this is a good example of sharing. And thank you so much to everyone who is joining. We are delighted, 36 of you, so just appreciating every single one of you. And to keep this video, it's also been recorded professionally, so look out for the professional version. But I'm really inspired. I've learned quite a lot, and I tell you what, I'm humbled, and many thanks for considering to invite me. I'm absolutely it has benefited me as a person. So just thanking everyone who, somebody from Fiji as well, Elda Lebang from Fiji, Darren all the way in Wales, I believe, Osipo Jalo. I know you're back from Sierra Leone, many thanks. So Nasir, I think you're somewhere around Manchester, I believe. Komiako Wanyambura, thank you so much from Kenya. Moses Dale from Kenya, lovely to see you. Usushi, I believe you're from Nigeria, many thanks for joining in. Rod Hopkins, lovely to see you. Tarol Embley, I've mentioned you. And of course, Elder Lebang, all the way from Fiji, we love you. Ola TJ, we thank you so much. Chenga George, all the way from Kenya, watching. We pass our regards all the way to Kenya. Pass the message how to pitch. Tell us your stories, and many, many thanks. Please also log into the app so that at least you can benefit and know your character. I thought that was really exciting. I'm absolutely delighted because I need to learn my character and look out for business, and make sure you've done that exercise. I'm going to be putting that out so you can see where that is. Tony Ndegwa, many thanks. Ram Eagle, and of course Jose Maxilino from Kenya. Fatah Ahmed, I believe you're in backing. Sarah Okello, I believe you're somewhere, but welcome as well. Peter Bray, always lovely to see you. Mel Gobson, sports and promotes diversity. We love you for the work that you do, and I really love you all. David Montana, and of course Molly Kirich, all the way from Kenya, we love you as well. Kenya joining us, of course Reverend George Agui, all the way in London, many, many thanks for that. Bishop T. Evans, we thank you for joining in. Ricky Totman, all the way in Tottenham, we love you. Flora Langat, Kenya, and of course Opung, we love you all, and I hope you're back from Nigeria as well. Many, many thanks. Patrick C. and Pili Mira, Duncan Buchanan, and Parish Councillor Omolola Oyeusi, Mwali, Michael. I believe we've hit over 40. Shiro Esther and Tim Okello. Samuel Dinsey, we're waving you back. And thank you so much. You've gone global. I love you all. And so in Kenya.
Thank you. Guys, I really appreciate you joining tonight and just seeing what's going on here. We had a wonderful speaker, Dean. Of course, I spoke at the beginning part of that, if you got to see any of it. But it's, wonderful if you can just discover all the goodies that are inside of you, essentially. I talk a lot about the archetypal characters. Every one of us has got remarkably strong character traits that we can call upon in order to really get those breakthroughs in our lives. Every one of us has challenges. Every one of us finds ourselves stuck in one place or another. And these archetypes that you can access with teamme.app, that just gives you a little insight into what makes you who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you do life the way that you do life, and helps you to see what are those strong keys that you've got. There's a later edition which will show you where you need to work on things, because leaders are the people who are willing to do whatever it takes, even if it's not their strongest trait. But usually your first step to success will be to take what is already strong and make use of it. Put that into action. If you're strong with a warrior, then really be that warrior. If you're strong with a lover, then really be that lover. So those are the different characters. We've got 6 key characters to learn from, and we can always be exploring ourselves to greater levels of depth with these characters, which is why I'm so passionate about this. And it's just a wonderful message to be able to take out to the world. But if you find that out for yourself, you can do that free online. Discover more about yourself that way. But then there are courses and all sorts that can help you go deeper to fill in those gaps. Because I find, for me, it's the sage. I really have to work hard on the sage. I'm sage when I study certain things. But you get me talking about my finances, and it's the area I struggle with. I need accountants. I have a money coach. I need people to support me because I'm not strong in that area. But I know that my leadership will be limited if I don't get a handle on that. It doesn't mean I will be the world's best accountant. I'm not made for that. But I realize that there are areas of my life I need to work upon. So that's one of the ones which is key for me. And for you, there'll be areas of weakness too there that need to be worked on. That's no shame in that. We just say we're built a certain way. We've developed a certain way. And it's good for us if we're going to move into leadership in any areas of our life, even if it's just leadership leadership in our family, or if it's leadership in our community, or in our church, or our community, or in our place of work, or even in the nation.
Thank you.
Those would be key things. You got me on my favorite subject.
I'm
I could talk
telling
for
you,
hours about
and
this
I
stuff.
tell you what, you've just had him. And you know what, I'm blessed. I'm from the faith. I'm blessed just to have met you, and this has really inspired a lot of people. I think this room is full up with your audience as well. I believe that we've reached out international, globally. Please, please, please follow him. What is the hashtag, please?
So if you want to find me, you find me on Facebook under the name PadPax. You'll find me there. But there's Team Me is the name of the brand. So teamme.com will get you through to the website, or teamme.app is the profiling tool. But if you want to find any other details, yeah, Team Me and Pad, P-A-D, and that will usually you'll find me there somewhere.
And of course, the other speaker?
So the other speaker is called Dean Russell. Tonight we're working with the hashtag of hashtag Power Pitch, and this is some of the keys that Dean is talking about tonight. I've known him for 20 years, but he's a good old friend.
And I love the work that they've done. That was really an inspiring story. Osifo, we've got a very good storyteller here. I believe you watched that. That is really powerful. Many, many thanks for changing children's life. I really love somebody who's got gratitude, and I thank him for the work that he's done.
Yeah,
thank
he's
you.
doing amazing stuff. Anyway,
Absolutely.
great to have you guys
And
follow
thank
us tonight.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much. Thank you. Speak soon. Thank you. So, you've just heard from them, both of them, so I thought I should just bring you live here. So thank you so much, Margaret Twist, for joining in, and of course Samuel Dinsey and Tim Okello. Lovely to see you all. We are on break, so I hope you follow it all the way through, and I hope you've enjoyed watching it. I'm sitting at the back, so I was not able to really make it really loud, but I hope you've captured something, and that's just me. I love sharing, and of course I'm due to launch some of the work and product that I sell, so watch out for that. And you can also follow me at JNM1000, at JNM1000, and of course subscribe to my YouTube as well, which is Juliet Mahapila. Juliet Mahapila. If you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. Please do subscribe to my channel, which is Juliet, just like in Juliet, Mahapila, Makhapila. Thank you so much for everybody who is joined. I hope you're enjoying, and I hope you're also discovering your purpose, which is what I do as well. Thank you. Let me just do my network, and I'm just going to put my phone somewhere, so as you wait, please bear with me.
Morning, Richard. I just hung down at 5 o'clock in the morning. I got to put the washing on. I got to get the kids into the car.
I'll just make a cup of tea for myself.
what can we do?
Not now, because yeah, there's so many abnormalities.
And I was on the wrong train. It's not going to be cheap.
Actually, most families and they
And I just thought, and if it was, you know, I can use all the cake.
So the other stuff as well.
Sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone. I just needed to have that break and also network. So we're just going back. So yes, I got my coffee. I needed that coffee just to fuel myself. But I believe you're really all benefiting. Ask the right questions. Just keep posting. I can see all your questions. If you'd like me to ask a question. And for those people who are saying it's quite low volume, it's because I was sitting at the back. So I'm going to move in 60 seconds. I'm going to be moving in front now, so you'll get to hear much better. Thank you so much for everybody joining. So it's 60 seconds, so we're back now. Thank you. Thank you so much, Baba. Thank you so much, Alfred. And of course, Aremurin. Thank you. We welcome you. And Samuel, we welcome you. Joyce Mboro, we welcome you. Margaret Twist, we welcome you as well.
Silent hush fell upon the room. Excellent, an expectant hush. So, I'm just going to hand it back over to Dean. I'll have a few final words to say at the end, and then we're going to try and allow a little bit of time. We do need to clear out at 9 o'clock tonight, actually out of the room to honour and respect the timing that we've been given. But thank you, Elsa, for the opportunity to speak. And it's been lovely to meet up with you all. Juliet over here, for those of you who didn't hear, has been our outside broadcasting unit, which has been great because half of this is going across to Kenya, Fiji, and even Coventry in Wales. So it's been looked far and wide. I'm not sure if America's woken up yet. Hi, it's my people from America. So that's great as well. So we are truly involved in a global event tonight. But I'm handing back over to Dean. We have just half an hour of solid, meaty content. The book that Dean has written, I've just had quick previews of it, and it is really, really solid stuff. But tonight, capture as much as you can, because I think that the book costs well over 100 quid, and it's for agencies who seriously need to be pitching, you know, for big, big money. And will make a serious difference. So capture everything you can, okay? Get it for free tonight. Well, cheap. All right. Handing back over to Dean.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. Thanks for all sticking around. It's always a good time. So I mentioned about asking the right questions. So just to recap, you know, for me, the pitch often isn't just about that end presentation. It's about all the bits that go into it. And knowing what the person wants from the start actually is going to give you a good indication of whether you can win the pitch or not. And so if you balance your time to focus on things you can win rather than things that you hope to win, you're going to be able to be far more effective and not have to take so many of the lows as the highs. you'll never win everything. You know, I'd love to be able to say that I'll give you a magic wand to win everything you go for, but the reality is if you pick carefully, you're more likely to win. And actually the big thing is learning from it. But during that initial stage, one of the things you have to really look at is the red flags. So what are the things that would stop you from winning? And some of those can be as simple as, well, actually, what's the location of the client? You know, can you get to them easily enough? You know, are they going to be happy, or are you going to be happy if you've got to travel an hour every day to meet them? Or, you know, are they going to be happy if you only do whatever you do over Skype? You know, simple things like that can be really important. But also, think about things like, you know, can they actually pay? Because increasingly, you know, you look at the high street, it's changed dramatically. I was previously the vice chair for the Federation of Small Business in Hertfordshire, and one of their big campaigns is the fact that the high street is rapidly disappearing. You know, small shops, big shops. If you think, just from in fact, I'll do a bit of a pub quiz. How many high street shops can you think of? I'll name one that doesn't exist anymore. Woolworths is one I remember. Any others?
House of Fraser.
House of Fraser.
Maplin?
Maplin, yeah.
PHS?
Yeah, PHS.
Nothing.
Yeah, Maplin's gone. Gutted. But any others?
CNA.
Yeah, CNA. You know, HMV's only got a small handful of Virgin Megastore. All of these places have disappeared. Now the reality is, in the latter days of them existing, they probably put out tenders to businesses, you know, on the hope that they wouldn't be disappearing. Would they have been able to pay them? You know, look at the finances of the organisations you're going after. Because sometimes it's really great to think, oh, we've got this really brilliant opportunity, but actually, can they pay? You know, a hope and a chance isn't going to be able to pay the mortgage. You've got to be practical about what it is that you can actually achieve. And there's some really great tools for that as well. If you're going after big opportunities, there's sites like DueDil, DUEDIL.com, I think. Due diligence, basically, to look at different financials, you know, companies' house, all of those places. So if you're working with businesses, do that. But also when you're working with individuals, you know, it's like tonight. I think you charge £5 for 10 quid.
Yes.
How much you charge? Sorry, and thank you all for paying to go on. But the reason why that's so important is because actually that incentivised you to come along, because otherwise you would have thrown that money away. So actually sometimes when you think about payment, don't always think about it, oh gosh, I've got to ask someone to pay. Actually, sometimes it's an incentive, it's a reason to do something. It gives somebody a kick up the backside to do something about it. And that also comes down to how much you price yourself at, it also comes down to how you pitch your budget. Because if you get that right, you shouldn't always feel guilty about charging money for something that you do. And that's why understanding those three components of the pitch, your brand, the storytelling, and the call to action, sale, are critical. Because if you understand that, you understand your value. And that also goes back to your purpose. You know, you might love doing something, but if you do it for free forever, you're not going to be able to pay the mortgage. You're not going to be able to do it more. You know, so actually you shouldn't feel guilty about charging a fair amount. Not fair amount in a big amount, but a fair amount for you, for what you do. Because you're not a charity, you know, but you can do charitable things with the skills that you've learned and the tools that you've gained. When developing, especially if you're doing something around a brief, track all the details. But that also goes into, you know, if you're sitting down with a prospect, whether it be an individual, a team, a business, or whatever, you know, think about it in terms of try and get as much detail from them as you can. You know, why do they want to do stuff? It all goes back to those questions from earlier. But what is it they're really looking for? Because sometimes they might be hiring somebody to do one job, but actually what they think they want, but actually what they need is very different. You know, if somebody goes and hires a painter to paint a nursery in their home because they're having a young child, they're not really paying them to paint, you know, because that's part of it. They can hire anyone. But actually what they're doing, they're hiring someone to fulfill a dream, to have a beautiful nursery for their child. You know, it's much more than that. And so when you think about what you're doing, what is it, what's the ambition, what's the dream, what's the expectation of what you're doing that will help people? And that also means that when you think about it for yourself, hopefully you're then going to deliver something of quality. Because it's very easy to sell shoddy work, it's very easy to sell stuff at scale, but actually you'll lose customers very quickly off the back end. You need to deliver quality, and then you've got word of mouth. You know, so it's much easier then to sell. I mean, the ultimate goal, I say, for a lot of my clients is, I want to get to you to the point that you don't have to pitch. You know, the ideal is to have a load of clients that love you, and they're pitching on your behalf. You know, so you have to think about that as well. This is more for bigger opportunities, but try and find out what I call know the score. So for a lot of big briefs, and I've learned this from a lot of the big agencies, is they'll have what's called a weighting system. So for them, the money, perhaps the budget's the most important thing, or the timing, or how the quality of the work. There's a classic triangle, if you've probably all heard of it, but which is quality, time, and cost. So most decisions will be based on one of those three things. Is your benefit to the client or to the prospect based on really good quality? In fact, cost won't be as important then, but it could be that are you the cheapest? So cost is going to be really important. And it could be down to timing. Can you do it the quickest? You know, sometimes that's really important. So when you're thinking about your position, especially from a pitching perspective, understand what it is from the prospect's perspective or from your customer's perspective. What is it they're really looking for? Are they coming to you because they know you'll do the best job in the world and you'll be brilliant? Or actually, are they coming to you because they've only got a certain amount of budget and that's all they can spend? Or is it because they know that you'll do it in 2 days, whereas actually everyone else has quoted 5 days? Think about where you sit within that triangle, because that will really inform who you're going after and what your USP is and what the benefit is to the customer and what they're looking for. And if you find those 3 things out early on, right from the start, it'll give you a sense of how to position your pitch or your pitch or your proposal or your budget, because it will mean that you're not wasting their time. If they've only got £100 for an hour's work or whatever, and all they've got is £100, and you do an amazing proposal and it's brilliant, and you say you do it tomorrow and all the rest, and it's £200, it's completely annoyed at the cost. I'll move over here. But you know, if you find that all they've got is that amount of budget and that's all they can actually spend, it doesn't matter how good your proposal is. If you can't afford you, they can't afford you. So do you go in with a discount, or do you say, well, actually, it's not the right client for me because they're not going to pay the bills? So you have to be quite tough on yourself and on your vision for your organisation, on what you will pitch and what you will take. And that's the same in life. How much will you take? What's your threshold for how much you'll take in life before you scream and say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore? It's the same in business. The trouble is, the reason why a lot of people don't like their jobs is because they're forced to go beyond their threshold because of other people around them. There's a classic thing, most people join a business or a brand and leave the manager. They leave because of the person who's telling them to do what they perhaps don't want to be doing. And that grates at them to the point that they go, I can't take this anymore, I'm leaving. And so you have to think, you want to build a business and build an organisation and build a life where you don't get to that threshold because you're living in a place of joy, effectively, a joy in getting up every morning and doing what you love doing. And the other trick as well, and this is probably again for bigger budgets, but goes back to my point around asking them from the start how much they have, is that often you can sneak under the line. Now, for really big projects, really big opportunities, you will find that, especially when things go to what they call tender, so when someone has to get 3 or 4 quotes in from different businesses, they will have a tender limit. Now, the truth is, and the trick to this, is that often there'll be a low point, at which they don't have to go to tender. Especially for big organisations and government and so on. Most people in organisations will have a sign-off point. So they'll go, well, actually, anything under, say, £5,000, I can sign off. Anything above that, we have to put it out to 3 different organisations, and they have to put a brief in, and all blah, 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 blah. Now, the reality is, if you know from day one and ask them, is there a threshold at which point you don't have to go to tender, you might be able to just say, well, actually, we can sneak under the line and come in at 9,500 and actually save ourselves weeks and weeks worth of work pitching for something we might not win. So you have to think about that and really try and think about, ask those questions. And that's the same for any walk of life. It could be that, it's a no-brainer for somebody to hire you right this moment because the price is right, without getting all Bruce Forsyth on us. But, you've got to think about that. And that means really it's about doing your research. You've got to understand the market, you have to understand who else is out there. And often what people do when they're doing research around their own organisation or around what they're doing, they do work on competitor analysis. They look at who else is out there doing the same thing. But you also need to do what I call comparator analysis. What other things could they do other than what you're doing? they could do nothing. The person who painting the nursery is an example. They could paint it themselves. They don't have to go out to a professional painter to do it. You know, they could hire one of their family to do it. There's lots of other options, and it's the same for any brand. If you understand your audience and understand what they're really looking for, it's really powerful. But the other bit with doing research, especially around comparators and competitors, is understand their needs and understand their audiences. Who are they targeting? Who are they trying to win? What campaigns have they done that have been successful? You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You know, and that's the biggest challenge for a lot of startups. They believe they're so unique, no one else has ever done this before. Well, that's nonsense. Everyone has sold something. Every big business has spent millions of pounds in research, and that's why they've done their ads in a certain way. That's why they do their products in a certain way. So whatever field you're in, and I'll say this to the people on the Facebook Live or whatever as well, you know, whatever field you're in, think about other people that are doing similar things to similar audiences and learn from what they've done. You know, if you're going to start a pop company and sell pop in a can, look at Coca-Cola, look at Pepsi, look at Tango, look at all those and say, well, actually, what have they done that's been so successful? Because actually, they will have spent millions of pounds on research that you don't need to if you can copy what they've done. Plagiarism isn't such a bad thing, you know, as long as you're not doing an exam. Actually, plagiarism is a really wonderful form of flattery, you know, to copy and look to see what else people have done. And that goes back to how you present yourself on your website, it goes to how you pitch, it goes to how you talk and the language that you use. Because familiarity, when pitching, is critical. And the research bit is all about familiarity. Understanding what else is out there and who else is out there that does similar things, you can talk a similar language around, but do it in a way that you can bring something new. Does that make sense? Okay, great. And just on that, if you're doing stuff within, you know, a space where you have to do research, thinkwithgoogle.com is a brilliant site, has loads of statistics and loads of insights, and also marketingcharts.com. So they won't work for everyone, and it's often US-centric, but you know, if you need some stats and some proof points, do it. You know, whether it's for a business plan or whether it's for a pitch, or whether it's just to see what else is out there, it's really powerful. And within that, also think about the language. So when I talk about familiarity, what language is people using? So not French or German, but you know, what's the terminology? But in particular, when talking about budgets, what are they used to hearing, and what are they used to hearing in terms of measurement? What are their measures of success? If they say, the measure of success for us, if you say working on a campaign, the measure of success for us is that we sell 1% more product globally, which would be a huge lift for many businesses, but 1% more globally. And you go in and go to them and say, you know what, we can reduce your costs by 10%. Now, to you, you might go, that's brilliant, because you know, we've done a better job, we've reduced your cost by 10%. And they might love that. But actually what they asked you to do was increase their sales by 1% globally. So you need to recognise that. And that doesn't matter what you're doing, you have to think about what is it and why is it they've come to you and what's their measure of success. That painter that I mentioned for the nursery, they might have painted that nursery beautifully, but they painted it pink and they wanted it blue. You know, it's still painted beautifully, they still did the same job, but the measure of success has been missed because that wasn't what the client wanted. And that's so true with pitching. So often people get carried away with what they can do, they forget what they've been asked to do. And so that's why understanding the brief and referring back to that, refer back to your notes, refer back to what people are looking for every single time. And that also goes down to the details. Now this is one more so when you do a lot of proposals and a lot of content. Proposals often is the point that a lot of sales work finishes, not everyone goes to pitch. But just as an example, the reason why I put check your template is because actually a lot of organisations reuse the same documents, their sales documents or the budgets documents or whatever. And I know it's a really silly thing, but so often things get missed, like leaving former clients' names in the document properties or in the footer. Believe me, I've said it many a time. But also really understanding, you know, what is it? What's the detail that they're looking for? How do they want you to present it? If they say we want it in a PowerPoint document or a PDF, and you send it in a Word document, you know, you've missed the mark. And you might think, well, that's crazy. It's just detail. The content's still there, budget. But actually, increasingly, especially if you go to bigger organisations, it becomes more important. Just a quick horror story for you. I was involved, well actually it wasn't me, it was one of my colleagues at an agency I worked at a few years ago. We had an opportunity that was worth probably £500,000, a lot of money. It was for a government contract. The team had spent 18 months working with the prospect, helping them write their brief, doing workshops around their strategy. It was a shoo-in for us, effectively, to at least get to the pitch stage and probably win it. Now the guys have done this beautifully. It was for a web project or digital project. Beautiful, probably a 200-300 pages proposal, printed it, beautiful designs in there, mock-ups, all the rest of it. Absolutely amazing. And they sent it to the client. They'd got it in on time. They'd sent an electronic copy, a physical copy, all nicely bound, got it to the client. Now the person at the agency who had the closest relationship phoned them about 2 days after the deadline and said, look, we saw that you got it on time, we've got the receipt, blah, 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 what's the next stage now? You know, really looking forward to it. And the person on the other end of the line said, I don't know how to tell you this. I'm really sorry, but you're not going through. And my colleague said, well, I don't understand, why not? I thought we pretty much wrote the brief for you. What the hell, you know? How can we not go through? And they weren't rude about it, but they were like, we just don't understand. Did we do something wrong? Did it get delivered to the wrong address? And they said, well, actually, for this government contract, procurement is involved. So that's often the bit which is very much the sort of back-end piece within the organisation, the tick boxes, effectively, to check that everything's been followed correctly. And they said, we're really sorry, but procurement has been involved, and there was a little detail in the brief that you may have missed. And in that detail, it said that on the back of your proposal, because this is going to form part of our contract, it had to have been signed by 2 directors. And it had been missed, hadn't been signed, they didn't get through. So as silly as these things sound, check your details, ask what's being looked for, make sure you cover all bases. And that's just one example of many that I could give you. One of the things as well is often when presenting as well as pitching, you know, understanding who you're presenting and pitching to. You know, thankfully Pad, before I came here today, told me the layout of the room, you know, how many people were here, some of your names, so I knew what sort of the scenario was going to be like. But if I'd walked in here and there were 3,000 of you, or 6 of you, you know, all sat in one table, it would have been a different dynamic. And so actually trying to understand who you're pitching to, who you're presenting to, will give you more confidence in what you're doing, but also make it more familiar. And in particular for a pitch scenario, if you're pitching to a team, you know, one of the tricks I often do with teams when I'm coaching them is that I'll get them to put photos from LinkedIn up on the wall of the people they're going to be pitching to. And it sounds crazy. I mean, it looks a bit like Line of Duty, you know. Which one's H? But the point is, what you can start to do then, because we're human, you know, we don't just respond to names, but it means you can put a face to a name before you walk in the room. You can shake someone's hand and confidently go, hello H, you know, and make sure that you're covering it right. And it's just a human thing. So try and get as familiar as you can with who you're pitching to, because they're not just robots. They're going to have an emotional perspective on what you're doing. There's a reason beyond their job that they're putting this tender out. But that also means, especially as you grow, for those of you who've got teams, you know, look after your team. Pitching can be really stressful. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. And one of the reasons why I developed the book was because I saw so many teams, especially in the agency world, who are utterly stressed. You know, because they've got deadlines, they know that if they lose this, it's going to cost money for the business. There's so many reasons why people get worried about this stuff, and it's not good for them, you know. And so actually, the more you can look after them, buy them a pizza if they're working late, you know, buy yourself a pizza if you're working late, you know, not every night, 'cause you might get like me. But you have to think about these things, you know, how are you looking after them? Be respectful, thank them for it. Because especially if you run a startup, this is your dream, but they've just got a job and they've just missed their kids' party or whatever, because they're helping you achieve your dream. Think about those things and how you tie it all together. And that really goes back to the point about chemistry. You know, when I was talking earlier about the 3 parts of the pitch, you know, the brand, the storytelling, and the sell, effectively, you know, the storytelling bit is your chemistry. It's, you know, what's your affinity to this group? Do they really want to work with you? But also vice versa, do you want to work with them? And often in the pitch process, you have to think about the chemistry meeting. You know, after you've been told, if you've been sent a physical, like written brief to do a piece of work, try and think next about, well, actually, can you meet them? Can you talk to them? Can you find out, you know, perhaps if you're doing something creative, can you test some of your ideas with them? You know, because if you can do that, you're going to be in a far more powerful position. What you don't want to do is blindly walk into a pitch. and assume you know everything that they want to know. And we were chatting earlier, you know, the pitch process starts like a year before in some cases, 2 years before, understanding what they are really looking for. The actual pitch itself, the sort of whole Dragon's Den, I'm going to stand here and get that pile of money, works for TV, but actually all the bits before are what lead up to that. That's the performance, but the bit before, you know, a bit like a stage play, the rehearsal, the script writers, the props, the sets, all of those things, it's the same sort of concept. You've got to get all that right, and then you can then shine. If you miss any of those and don't think about it, you risk not being able to do what you need to do when you meet them face to face, which is to focus on the chemistry. Because the reality is, if you're in a competitive pitch, if you're pitching to a lot of different people, or if they're pitching, if there's lots of organisations going for the same role, you know, which most pitches are competitive, the idea that you're so different from everyone else that you're just going to win it is sort of nonsense. They'll have picked a bunch of suppliers who are probably quite similar and might fit on that triangle. One might be cheaper, one might be faster, one might be better quality. And so you have to think about how do you play those off each other, how do you fit within that, so that then when you're in the room with them, you can focus on building a rapport, knowing that you've ticked all the boxes beforehand. If you haven't done that, you know, if you focus on going in and splurting a load of content out to them, you risk, you know, losing them. They need to work with you. You know, they need to like you. Who wants to give money to someone they hate? You know, so you want to work with people unless they've got something you absolutely need. You're probably going to choose, you know, people that you want to work with who can also do the job well and for a good price. And that ties very closely into this bit, which is that, you know, 95% of decisions are based upon emotions. You know, you have to think about the emotional impact, the emotional context of that. You know, what is it that you do that you can bring emotion to? And that's where the storytelling is so important. And similarly, you know, when thinking about that, the emotional bit is where the creativity often comes from. And that's where you need space to think. So there's this great quote by Naomi Judd, you know, solitude is creativity's best friend, and solitude is refreshment for our souls. And it's the same point as I said earlier. Sometimes you have to stand back and give yourself a bit of space for that. And there's a great tool for this, which is called the 30 Circles test. I won't get you to do it now, but if you look up, there's a search for Tim Brown and TED Talks, and he talks about this excellent tool which is called the 30 Circles test. And what you do, you give yourselves 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you have to do as many doodles in these circles as you can. But try and think about a problem you're trying to solve, or a pitch idea, or a creative concept while you're doing it. And what you'll find is subliminally, you'll often find some of the doodles you do will solve the problem, because you're not thinking about it, but you're letting another part of your mind think about these things. And also it takes you away for a few moments. Sometimes 2-3 minutes of sort of breathing exercises can be worth, you know, an hour sitting watching TV, because actually you're actively thinking about things differently. That was when the break was going to be earlier. I normally do this for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, so so I'm squeezing it all together. But you know, but that also goes back into the concept around telling the story. I know Pat covered this earlier, but you know, when you think about it, for a lot of pitches or sales meetings, they're at least an hour long, 45 minutes, usually often 90 minutes. That's the same length as like an episode of Game of Thrones or a Hollywood movie. So how do you keep people's attention during that? If you just talk monotone throughout that, they're going to be bored stiff. If there's only one of you in there and there's 6 of them, you know, when you could have brought other people along, and all they're listening to is you talking at them, is that going to be exciting? So you have to think about the characters in the room, going back to Pad's point about archetypes, but also what's the story? How do you get them into your story? You know, Pad mentioned earlier about Luke Skywalker. You know, I used to talk about Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter. All of these characters, actually, at the start of the films, are pretty dull. Slightly difficult situations, but they're pretty dull, and they're pretty much the same character. They're these vanilla characters that people can see themselves in, that are set in these challenges, that then go on a hero's journey to become something special. And the reason why they're so powerful is because everyone can see themselves in them, and that's why they're so bland. Because actually you can then read your points of view into them. It's like art, you know. You get out of it what you see in it from your own life's journey. And so when you're pitching, you have to enable the prospect or your potential client to see themselves working with you, see themselves seeing the results that you're going to deliver for them, see them using your product or your service. You've got to bring them into it and give them space to think around that. And that really goes back to the point around show not tell. You know, it's really critical that you've got to think about how can you show them what you do, show them and get them to think in their head, use their imagination to believe in what you're doing, so that they sell it to themselves. You don't want to be selling to them all the time. You want them to have context to think, to show not tell. So don't just tell them how brilliant your product is. If you say do a food product, take in the food, you know, get them to eat it. If you're doing a service, show other people that have had, who are like them, who give you brilliant testimonials, so they can see that this works. And that's to this point here, when, especially when you're doing proposals or written pitches, you know, the skill of writing is to create a context in which other people can think. But that's also with speaking. You know, if you look at any brilliant speaker, from Churchill to Obama, any of those, what they often do is speak in very short sentences, often to wait for applause. I won't. So that people can have a thought of their own. You know, and so, you know, yes, we can. Think about all of those phrases. They're all normally 3-word statements. Now, as a politician, you can do that because you're normally at a rally. So don't talk that slowly. But you do need to give people context to think. So if you've come up with a brilliant idea and you're sharing that, give people time to take it on board. Just because you know it doesn't mean that they instantly get it. You've gone on a journey to get the idea or the product or the offering you're doing. You have to give them space to do the same. You can't just assume because you've told them they'll get it straight away. And just on the latter part of this, one of the things that I often come across with pitching, and especially with the work I do within That Pitch, is often about the presentation side of things. And one of the things I found fascinating, I've got a free ebook on my website actually, I've got several, but one of which is called Breathe, which is about how to overcome presentation fears. So if you go to www.winthatpitch.win, and then look at free resources. There's a load of free ebooks on there, so I recommend you have a look and download them. But one of the things when I was writing the ebook and within my How to Win book, actually was how fear of public speaking is often the thing that comes to mind when people talk about pitching. And glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking, is actually a more widely, what's the best phrase to use? It's a more popular. It's not popular phobia, but it's, you know, it's a more more common phobia than fear of spiders, you know, or fear of the dark. So actually, you know, it's very common, and a lot of people feel embarrassed to say that they're scared of speaking. But believe me, I've met managing directors of big companies who still get dry mouth. The heart goes like this when they walk in a room. In fact, actually, just a quick question: if I told you now that outside that door, some people like me and like you in the back will go bring it on. For other people, they're like, oh my gosh. In fact, in one room, I saw someone almost, you know, freeze just at the imagination of the thought of having to do it. So that it's common, you know, and there's techniques that you can do to get over that. And that's the book, that's the ebook actually, the free ebook. So if you go to winthatpitch.win. But the reason why I say that is that, you know, you have to think about the breathing part when pitching and when presenting. And actually, there's a physical reaction we have to be able to convincingly go into a room with confidence and present with gravitas and get that right. Now, Pat, if you don't mind, can I add another 5 minutes to our time?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Take it from mine.
Go on, because I'm in fear of this point here with the presentation of doing what I'm saying not to do, which is that the basic rule of human nature is that powerful people speak slowly and subservient people speak quickly. Because if they don't speak fast, nobody will listen to them. And there's a fear of that, isn't there? You know, when you're pitching or when you're in a situation where you don't quite know what you're doing, to try and sort of get it out, you know, speak really quickly. But actually, to the viewer, as it were, to the person listening, that can actually be off-putting. It can actually take away your confidence. It can take away their confidence in you. So you have to take time to breathe, slow it down. I've done a lot of work with, we've had some secretaries of state, which has been amazing work. And one of them, I won't say who, but one of them is currently a secretary of state. He used to do this, in fact I will say, so Liam Fox, who's the current international Secretary of State for International Trade, I used to do a series with him called 1 Minute Fox. I recommend you check it out, it's a few years ago. But it was one of the first YouTube series by politicians talking to camera about topics of the day. So I'd meet with Liam quite regularly, and we'd sit in his office in Parliament, and he'd do these pieces to camera. Now, the thing I learned from Liam, which was amazing, was that actually, if per minute, when doing a script or when talking, if you aim to do 100 words per minute, actually that's quite a good flow to go at. So when you're preparing, if you're doing a speech, like a written speech, or even with preparing your pitch, try and aim for about 100 words per minute. A bit less if you can, a bit more if you have to, but you'll find that's probably a pretty good pace. And what you find, if you check out the 1 Minute Fox videos online, you'll find actually that, you know, when you watch those, whether you agree or not with the politics of it, now put that to one side, actually that used to come across very well, but you know, what he was brilliant at, so you could just do it like that. You know, for a lot of people it takes preparation, but it's worth, you know, looking at those things. And that also means look at your heroes, you know, look at who is it you really admire, who convinces you when they speak, who is it that you think is amazing, that you've seen present live on stage, or on TV, or at a rally, or whatever, and learn from them. What is it, try and understand what is it about that TED talk you might have loved, that you loved. Was it how they spoke, was it what they said, was it the content? Because the more you see what other people do that you admire, you can start to pick up on those traits and learn from them yourself. Because if you love it in other people, you probably will love doing it yourself. So try and pick up on those traits. And that also goes back to my point about slowing down, you know, try and breathe, try and think about what it is you're actually doing. And one of the tips for that, actually, which just is that if you are nervous when you speak, and a lot of people are usually in the first few moments of giving a talk or pitching, is have a glass of water nearby. Now I look like I'm probably carrying a vodka with my hand, holding it like this. Now have a glass of water, a bottle of water on a table nearby, or on a podium. And you know, if you feel you're getting a bit stressed, just take a sip. Because to you, that will feel like it was like forever. But it will give you a moment to think. And to you, I imagine, that didn't last that long. You know, it's just been taking a sip of water. So practice things like that, because they're really good tools to be able to do that. And of course, body language is critical. You know, if you're sat in a meeting like this, you know, you're not really giving out much of a feeling that you really want to be there. If you're fidgeting with stuff, playing with your hands or with your iPod or whatever, iPod shows my age, you know, your iPhone or whatever, you know, actually it's going to put people off. So learn how to use your body language. I mean, if you're talking, the rule of thumb for gravitas is to sort of get your feet about shoulder width, stand up straight, try and pull this in, you know, shoulders up, look out. Now, for me, I'm not really here to give a speech, but, you know, if you're at a podium and you stand up straight and give that talk, okay, I don't know whether Pat just did the peace sign or told me 2 minutes, but
I was thinking of Winston Churchill.
Yeah, totally, I was glad it wasn't that way. But you know, think about those things, and that's also important when sitting down. Most pitches will be sat down and often with other people speaking, so learn to be quiet, learn to be still, and learn to watch other people when they're talking. Because the risk is if you don't, then actually you're going to be a distraction from what someone else is saying. You know, because the prospect, and the best way to learn this actually is watch newsreaders when there's 2 newsreaders like on Breakfast TV. Watch the person who isn't speaking, and you'll find they're often just very still and just looking at the other person or looking straight ahead. Now you'll never, that person, it takes practice, it probably feels a bit awkward, but actually to the viewer, you don't notice them, they're invisible because the other person's talking. So tips like that are really useful when doing team pitches. Props are really powerful, you know, take things in that can show examples of what you do. I used a 3D printout once for a client where we needed to show their data. And I thought I'd show it on screen, but actually I got a 3D printout of their data and one of their competitors, and showed their competitors by scale was this big and theirs was this big in terms of conversations. And it just meant that actually they were quite interested in seeing a 3D print, because it was a few years ago and it was quite a new thing, but also it just brought it to life. So you don't want people just looking at the screen, you want them looking around the room or other things. And that also goes back to your budget. Think about how you can present your budget in a better way. So often when it gets to the budget and the time and the investment piece, people will give loads of spreadsheets on the screen, but actually simplify it on the screen and give people the raw data, as it were, or the spreadsheet, so they can look at it close up. Try and simplify it. If it's 1,000 hours of somebody to work to complete the activity, break it down. So the investment here is that 1,000 hours, you know, and that bit there is for the project management or whatever. Just simplify it. Use infographics, actually a really good tool as well. And also, which is ironic given the fact I'm just about to overrun, plan your time. You know, think about how long you've got. Think about, you know, making time for Q&A. The one thing that people often don't do is for pitching, is they forget to plan the question and answer session. Often you're given, say, 15 minutes to pitch or half an hour to pitch and 20 minutes to answer questions. They plan the presentation, but don't plan the Q&A. And that's a trick again. Sorry to use the politics word, watch politicians when they're being interviewed on TV. If they're asked one question, they get moaned at for not answering, but they will always link it to what they do want to talk about. So if you're being asked in a pitch, answer the question, of course, don't be evasive, but then link it and practice linking that to something else you want to add that you weren't able to add into the pitch. I've just got about 2-3 slides I'll read quick. Being inspired by the best, I mentioned, you know, learn from others that are taken on board, but also plan for the unexpected. You know, like now, with overrunning slightly, but you know, when thinking of the unexpected, you know, what could go wrong? Trains, taxis, flat tire position. I did work in Miami a few years ago, and I said to the team, we've got to plan, because we were doing social media, plan for if somebody is ill on site. You know, what if someone has a heart attack? And they went, oh, that won't happen. You know what happened? Hurricane Sandy hit, and half the people couldn't attend. You know, no one had planned for a hurricane hitting the location we were going to be in. So you do have to plan for the worst, not necessarily hurricanes, but do think about what could go wrong and what's your backup. If you can't make it, is there somebody else who can? Or what do you do in terms of rearranging? The follow-up is key. You know, what questions are you going to ask? And the bit for me that often gets missed, and probably the most important bit, is whether you win, lose or draw a pitch, learn from it. You've just invested time and money and effort into trying to win that pitch, which is a good plug for my business. But you know, if you haven't, at least use that investment to learn how you can win next time. If a client or prospect has asked you to come along and pitch for something, you know, the least you can do at the start is say to them, look, at the end of the pitch, could we do a quick questionnaire with you and ask you a few questions? You know, so have a consistent set of questions and learn from that. Because it might be something simple that you didn't win on. It might be as simple as, you know, you were 10% over the budget, you know, and you get that feedback 4 or 5 times, you reduce your budget, you know, or you go after different prospects. So, to summarise, prepare as much as you can. You know, when I talk about resume right at the start, you know, think about that process, you know, the ability to prepare for the unexpected, but also understand the human emotion aspect of that. You know, what is it that, you know, is really going to make a difference to them and it's going to resonate with what they're trying to achieve. Check for red flags. Sometimes you don't want to pitch. Actually focus on what you can achieve rather than trying to do everything. Tell a story. Think about what it is that really resonates with you and resonates with them. You know, bring them into the story, bring them into your success so that they feel it too and they'll achieve something from it. Be confident, you know, and that often comes from preparation. You know, I talk about rehearse. You know, when you're pitching and when you're presenting, the more you practice it, even if it feels really weird, and I don't like rehearsing, but actually you find that there's a memory that comes in. In fact, there's a little-known fact that most pilots, airline pilots, before they fly, they'll do this. They'll do the brace position. And the reason being is it's a muscle memory, so that if something did happen, they don't have to think. They'll just instantly go into the brace position. And you need to do that almost, not that movement, but you know, that would be a bit odd. But you know, think about how you can tie that together. So in terms of us, in terms of winning that pitch, just very quickly, you know, everyone who's here, if you get in touch with me, if you do want any of our services, have a look on the website. Gladly give you 10% off, which could be worth thousands of pounds to you depending on the size of the project. But the main thing I wanted to say is please take a photo of this page and go to this link before Sunday, because it'll be ending on Sunday. But Pad mentioned about my book being 100 quid, but actually, because it's going on Amazon in a few weeks' time, it's going to be about 16 quid. So don't buy that from my website yet. But what you will want to do, potentially, is if you go to this link, I've taken off £150 from my online masterclass, which is 8 hours of all this stuff, unpicking it all, video the lot. So it means what normally is about 250 quid, you can get for £97. But it's only there till Sunday. So I do recommend doing it. Of course, I'm biased massively, but everyone who's done it, you know, from people at London and Partners who've done the workshops through to clients who are all over the place, have all said that they've found value. So I promise I'm not trying to do a hard sell, but hopefully if you've got value from tonight, then 8 hours worth with quizzes. And the other bit to note on that is that it's all CPD accredited. So you actually get CPD, continued professional development points, for doing the online course. So hopefully that's a benefit to you all as well if you've got day jobs. And then finally, be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Thank you. Cheers, thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
There you go.
So guys, we're going to round up fairly promptly, but really appreciate, Dean, all the stuff you've been able to take us through. An awful lot there. I'm glad your book isn't quite 100 and whatever it was.
They won't be soon.
So,
But you get the book as part of the course. Just that.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
part of the course,
Yeah,
you get the
yeah.
book anyway, so that's great. And the course, if you sign up for the course, it's kind of there forever. There's
Oh
no
yeah, yeah,
time
totally.
limit
Yeah,
or
you can
anything,
do
it's
it
just
whenever you want.
access
But
to
yeah,
the
just
course.
the offer on copies up to Sunday, so
Cool.
feel free.
Excellent, good stuff. Now, couple of tiny little slides. I'm not even sure I'm going to do these. Let's see where we go. Where's my stuff? Where am I? Right. Because I wanted to just round up with a couple of thoughts in terms of the teams that you create are very, very often a success factor in what you're seeking to do. So if you're in a relationship, there's two of you, you've got to be the person who takes the responsibility and brings about the effective communication. If you're waiting for the other person to do that, you're probably going to be both waiting forever. You need to all learn to step up and move forward with that. If, however, you're trying to do a pitch sort of situation or any scenario where you have other people available, it really is critical that we work together to develop the presentation. These are fabulous principles that being put together here, but also get to know each other and learn how you both contribute, but also where you both are lacking in the way that you're made. Because every one of us has strengths, that's our strength nation, but these are the areas that we can do well. And hopefully you found a scenario where you're getting together with people but you can be looking at how they go about it is different, but it's two things differently. And this is where one has to learn such a simple and powerful model to take this forward. The dynamics that you see in these days
sage and the jester, but they both look at the past. Mentalist or even a psychic. It's not. It's just archetypal. Those patterns exist with each of us. She plays back filling in a bunch of questions, and I could do it with any one of you who's filled in that profile. But the great thing is when you start bringing teams together, you can then say, what's the purpose of the team? How many have you got? Right, let me tell you where your problems are at the moment. Let me tell you where your greatest opportunities are. Let me tell you where the gaps are and what you need to bring in. It's so obvious once you start working with this. My point for raising this is to highlight to you that these are rich, rich areas. Dean's given you structure and hard facts to deal with. I'm trying to emphasize the people dynamic here that you can't take out of the equation as well. Understanding yourself, but also gives you an opportunity to understand the audiences you're dealing with and particularly your teams. I know Dean wasn't able to bring in a hard copy of his book tonight. I've got just a couple if you are interested as well, so I'm just going to pinpoint those at the end. It also talks about, just as a final hint in the book, what happens when these archetypes' needs are not being met. They go into an overheated state. The sovereign becomes the tyrant. The warrior becomes the savage or bully. The sage becomes the hermit. Goes off, I'm just too intelligent for you, I can't talk to you, and goes up and hides in a hill somewhere. The mystic becomes the sorcerer, starts becoming manipulative. The lover becomes the desperado. Not just, I want to connect with you, I must connect with you, I want to connect more with you. Have I had those sort of people? The jester becomes the idiot, in the literal sense of the word, id. They become totally self-focused. They don't think about anything else, and they become sarcastic and sardonic and all the rest. But equally, there's a frozen shadow state, where if any of you have ever given your best shot at something and you've still failed, what do you do? For a while, you probably implode, and you just give up. And you saw that in the film Gladiator, where the strongest warrior of all of the people in the film fails to save his family, he totally implodes. And he does nothing. They're prodding him with a sword, the greatest warrior on the planet, and he's sitting there letting them do it. He's given up. The warrior becomes the victim, but equally, the sovereign becomes the slave, the one who gives the orders to the one who takes every order. The sage becomes the dummy, the mystic becomes the fantasist, the lover loses all sense of emotion, becomes a total stoic. Yeah, the jester just becomes a depressive, nothing to laugh at, nothing to make light, just implodes. And that actually can help you in therapeutic situations as well. If you understand the strongest archetype, you can then reawaken that archetype. So that's exactly what happened in the film Gladiator. Although I wouldn't suggest the Gladiator ring as the best therapy environment, okay? But it worked for him. So who am I to complain? So we can go on about that. Oh, if you're interested in understanding teams, we have all these wonderful little charts about where you should be and where you actually are. We can then see the gaps between where you are and where you should be for your particular role. We agree at top level with managers about particular roles and responsibilities, and then we do the whole team thing as well. I'm running beta programs of this. It's only just been released if you're in a situation where you want to see what the teams are all about. And then if you are interested, there's the book Team Me, which is almost 7 years old now. Talks about the shadow types, talks about the relationships, talks about all sorts of stuff, and has this wonderful mythical story running all the way through it, which is continued in my second book, Team Guy, but I haven't even got a hard copy of that today. If you're interested, there's an audio version of that. There's Team Me as the book, and finally, I've got some audios, which some of you guys have been using, the archetype activation audios, which are 7-minute soundtracks, which literally, you put your headphones on, and after 7 minutes, it has awakened whichever archetype you've chosen in there as well, okay? Most of the books and the audios, that's 10 quid each for those, but the The archetype activation audios is 20 quid. If you buy that tonight, it's on a memory stick. I've actually thrown on the audio book as well as a freebie, and a bunch of other freebies on that as well. So if you're interested in that, come and see me at the end. But those archetype activation audios are absolutely unique, but you literally put them on. Tracy, I know you've used the Warrior one, haven't you? Does it work? Does it?
I'm so not Warrior.
You're so not Warrior. And yet, do the audios actually do something?
Yeah.
So it connects, because every one of us has every one of these characters inside of us, but just like muscles in the gym, when you first work with a personal trainer, the personal trainer's like, we've got some work to do. But he doesn't sit there and say, you're a no-hoper, you have no muscles. You know, you do have muscles, and if you exercise them, you can strengthen them, and that's what these audios have been built to do. Yeah. So there's nothing quite like them on the market. It's not a meditation, it's an activation. Okay?
Hypnosis, yeah?
It's what?
Did you understand what I told you?
No, I didn't see.
Hypnosis?
No, it's not hypnosis. It's more like when I first met up with my mentor, who was an SAS major, immediately something inside of me stepped up. You don't mess in the presence of people like that. And that's what the audios are like. You are in the presence of a different character who is operating strongly in that character. And when you hang around with that person long enough, it will rub off on you. So it's very conscious, it's not hypnotic, but you will find that it gets you at a gut level. And there are some people who listen to the Lover track and have just gone, oh my word, I've got to change. Because I'm just not like that, and I see the wonderful value of what the Lover in its full expression should be. Yeah? So I hope that's explained some of that. Yeah?
I've used them as well.
You've used them? You like
and I
them?
really love your book as well. So.
You get the book, and you've done the courses. There are video courses as well that haven't been talked about. Dom?
So you gave me one, I bought one 3 or 4 years ago. Have you updated it, upgraded it, or was it always
Still the
perfect
same
and it's
stuff.
Still perfect.
Same stuff.
Yeah.
Still with the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra backing it
Okay.
up as well.
Right.
Which was a nice thing to have. So we are hitting time, but do follow up with Dean and his amazing offer. I'm not giving you 100 quid off anything. So chase up on his stuff. But if you're interested in that, come and find us. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience here, and for the rest of you around the world, wonderful to have you with us as well there. Elsa, back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really want to say thanks to both Pad and Dean for a wealth of information that you shared this evening. And I just hope that all of you have managed to get not just sound bites, but how can I say, a nice map now that will just transfer or transform the way that you currently do business. So I'm really grateful. I mean, I'm a host, and I'm so grateful for what you've both done, giving up your time and actually sharing so openly. So thanks very much. Thanks to you also for coming in this evening to support us, and also to network and get to know one another. So hopefully as we move forward, we'll continue to keep you in contact with what we're doing. But I think I've learned so much tonight. I mean, and I'm a person, those of you that know me, I've learned a lot in life. But tonight, it's like a big cherry on the top now. So now I'm ready to continue. So thanks very much. If we do want to network, if we can do it outside the rooms, at least they know that, we're moving on and don't start putting extra pound signs on the room. So thanks again, and all the best. And again, Dean, thanks very much, and also to Pad. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everyone who's joined in. I love you all, and I hope you've learned quite a lot. And as for me and my house, it is the African Wonder Woman, and of course, also if you've learned something, please do comment. Let us know your thoughts about what you had, and follow me at JNM1000 as well. And if you'd like to contact me as well and find your purpose in life, please do contact me. Do not hesitate. As usual, it's your one and only African Wonder Woman, Juliet Mahapila, and of course at JNM1000, and of course hashtag PowerPitch as well. And of course, it's lovely. Thank you so much to Pad, and he invited me to this event. So love you all for watching. Until then, it's a goodbye from me. Let me grab some of those moments, and it's lovely to see you all. Many, many thanks. Just quick one, Osuchi, and just quickly thanking everyone. Philip Nyamai, Tom Tukumbo, Stone Kahi, Alison Former, and everybody else. I love you all. Thank you so much. From wherever you're joining, I hope you've learned something. Let me know what you've really taken on from this clip and help me share it as well. And if you decide to get in touch with any of them, tell them you saw it from the African Wonder Woman, Juliet Mahapila. Don't forget that. Many thanks for coming on board. Love you all at JNM1000. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Juliet Mahapila. Speak soon. Bye-bye for now. See you later. Bye-bye. Love you all. Bye.